Hello everyone. Happy Wednesday. Thanks a lot for joining us on Twitch and LinkedIn Live. My name is Aniket Bulbule. I'm a partner solutions architect here at AWS, and I'm joined today by my co-host Rachel. Hey Rachel, how are you?
Hi, Aniket. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Howdy Partner episode. My name is Rachel Pothen, and I'm also a Partner Solutions Architect here at AWS, just like Aniket.
Awesome. So Rachel, do you want to just do a quick intro for our viewers out there? What Howdy Partner is? You want to just like talk about what exactly the show is?
Yeah, so Howdy Partner is a show we do here at AWS with our AWS partners. So at each Howdy Partner episode, we have a super cool AWS partner come in and they talk us through the super cool stuff that they're doing using our AWS services and they give us a demo of one of their solutions.
Awesome. So who do we have, Rachel, today?
Oh, today we have PagerDuty with us, who is a really cool AWS partner. And they've been doing a ton of stuff in different spaces like DevOps, AIOps, and also process automation.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I've heard of PagerDuty, so I'm just excited to meet our representatives from PagerDuty. With that being said, hey Dormain, hey Vinh, how are
Hey,
you?
hi, Aniket.
Hey, Rachel.
How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. I've got my Western shirt on. You said this was a Howdy Partner show. So if it wasn't a shoes off household, I'd be in cowboy boots and ready to scuffle on over. So
I'm glad to see you so excited for the show. We're happy to have you here. Do you want to just give a brief intro for our viewers? Just tell us a bit about yourself as well as what PagerDuty does.
yeah, I've got a couple slides to kind of walk through as a visual support as well, if that's useful. But I'm Dormain. I lead our advocacy program here at PagerDuty. I've been at PagerDuty for a couple of years. And yeah, excited to be here. AWS is certainly one of our biggest partners and one that we have just tons of customers. We've got over 1 million users on the platform. And we can see that a lot of them are using AWS and they are using the integrations with things like AWS CloudWatch to pull in metrics. We built a lot of interesting integrations and sort of content to help people get started with process automation jobs. Rachel, you mentioned how process automation is another area we've kind of expanded into. So really helping to build out the full life cycle of operations for folks and dealing with a lot of those day two happenings, right? To keep things moving along smoothly when there's unplanned, high impact, and really time sensitive things that need to happen, whether you need to mobilize the right people, but you want to do so in a way that's not super disruptive. You don't want to have to throw lots of bodies at the problem.
Yeah.
So this is where AI and automation are a really big part of the way that we do this. And, we've been around for over 10 years. Actually, the founders came out of AWS. And we've seen a lot of companies as they've been on their journey to migrate to AWS and adopt new services, using PagerDuty to really help build a lot of the sort of resilience practice that goes along with that, and working in a new way as they familiarize themselves with the cloud and cloud native applications. And so, one of the ways to do it differently, it maps to a lot of the kind of traditional, even ITIL practices, but instead of like, you need a whole team to do that, PagerDuty kind of is that team with the automation and AI behind the scenes that's really doing a lot of the investigation of the data and then doing very pinpoint actions with getting the right people involved.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
Sounds exciting.
When do you want to just give a brief intro before we jump into what we're doing? What you're planning on showing?
Yes. So my name is Vinh. I am a senior solution consultant at PagerDuty. I work with Dormain, AWS, and a lot of other folks in the enterprise sales organizations. I work with AWS technology here and there, mostly building the integration between CloudWatch and PagerDuty, as well as some of the AWS solution like SageMaker, EKS, and so on and so on. Today, my focus is basically talk about how we actually integrate PagerDuty with SageMaker from a machine learning model perspective, as well how that tied to AWS CloudWatch integrations. Hopefully, I can share some of the learning that I'm not the expert in SageMaker nor CloudWatch, but I know enough to basically build the integration and tie that to what Dormain described as mobilize the right resource, helping organization basically quick to reduce time to resolutions when there's issue with their applications.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we already have excited viewers. So we have a comment that says that PagerDuty isn't just for when I get on-call messages at 3 a.m. And for anyone who's been on call, that's definitely relatable.
No, it's a great call out. I think that's one of the, on the one hand, like a lot of people have heard of PagerDuty. Yeah, I've heard of that. Maybe they've got the app installed on their phone, or they're on an on-call schedule somewhere. I think what probably a lot of people don't realize is how much more we've built out. And actually, Aniket, if this might be a good time, if you want to pull up those slides. First, there's, of course, required disclaimers, because actually one thing that's really fun is that we get to cover a few like little sneak previews into some capabilities that are in early access right now. And so this is just the disclaimer, safe harbor statement that some things can and will change. But this is kind of an updated view, and like if you can fit it into a slide, which is so hard sometimes, of the operations cloud, which is really what we call kind of the superset of what we brought together to sort of solve this bigger problem and to help organizations just build that resilient practice so that they can grow their revenue, but do so cost efficiently and reduce those risks of downtime, security risks. We get used by a lot of security teams, and other sort of, whether it's falling out of compliance with something. So reducing those types of risks. So on the left-hand side, you see a sampling of a lot of different sources of really event data. Like there's just constantly things happening. And today, you look at people's architectures and what they've built, there's just been this explosion, this Cambrian explosion of different tools available to developers, increasingly complex architectures, right? You're seeing everything from microservices architectures, and you've got your Lambdas in there. You've still got stuff, a lot of folks have stuff still in their on-premises data center. So stuff's kind of all over the place and increasingly connected and talking to each other, right? Different teams are like, well, I'm using this monitoring tool and that team's using a different thing. Your security teams are looking at their tools. You've got change events coming in through all the CI/CD tooling that you have. And then you've got the cloud infrastructure itself, which can be anywhere from just really base level infrastructure all the way up to some really sophisticated services. And so that's like a lot of data. And just a lot of bing, beep, bops going on all the time. And how do you kind of find the signal in all of that noise is one of the layers of problems. And then on the other hand, there's actually like what we find again and again, and this has been, I think Forbes has written up, 50-some% of customer impacting issues are reported by customers. So even with all of the sort of sensors in the world and monitoring systems out there, what we find is actually we still have customers reporting in issues, right? And so our customers are hearing from their customers where that wasn't caught in some, the monitoring system, they say it's all green, everything's good. And so it's really important to kind of balance that with being able to take in the signal directly from customers. So I'll come back to that in a minute, but you see that we've got those integrations with the customer service facing tools like ServiceNow, Salesforce, Service Cloud, and Zendesk, and those types of places where your customer support agents or sort of the omni-channel customer support, that's pulling in the signal from customers who might be reporting something that was missed. So anyways, that's all like that's the data kind of flowing in. And then you've got to take action on it. And so, you could wait until someone is engaged. But what we find is that there's a lot of repeated patterns, right? The same types of diagnostic tests get run again and again and again. It's almost that everyone gets pulled in and you're guilty until proven innocent, right? It's like, show me that the database is loading data. And then, I know that that's not the problem. And, tell me that the network is responding, do a ping test and, check the load balancer. And everyone's got to kind of check their part and pieces. And what folks really hate is when, they're out at the beach with their kids or their grandkids, and they're getting pulled in to an incident or an escalation just to prove that their thing is fine. And so this is something that we've done a lot of work to basically help people wrap those diagnostic tests, those really routine checks that you want to do, and then wrap those and expose them in to have other teams to be able to run them. And then going even a step further is not just, hey, how does someone who's the kind of first responder on an incident say, hey, I want to run that test to just make sure that thing is on. That's not the problem. But actually what you'll see is how you can even start to have that be event triggered, right? So you have an event-driven automation flow, so that by the time a person is actually engaged, they're looking at data that's been correlated and compressed, and they're already seeing the output of a lot of the sort of first things that they would check anyways. They have so much more context and information to make the best next decision and ultimately shorten the time to resolve whatever that issue is. And so from there, then we know that like when you do have those issues, there's going to be certain patterns of like, okay, we want to make sure if it's this type of incident, if it's a P1, we want to treat that with this protocol around major incident response. And we want to engage certain teams. We want to set up a Slack room and a Chime room and have ways for the different teams to be engaged. We want to send status updates to different stakeholders, and then we also want to make sure that we're keeping our customers informed with a status page so that they're not bombarding our customer support teams, but they're able to sort of see, yes, we recognize there's an issue and it's being investigated, or whatever the next sort of status update is that's customer facing. And then those customer support teams, again, who maybe they were the first point of contact in terms of the first place where, something, there's a bit of disturbance in the forest in the first place it's detected, but they've often been really disconnected with other teams that are either in IT or, engineers in development who would normally be the people who would respond. How do we bridge that gap and actually have information flowing both ways so that a customer service agent can see, oh yeah, there is an incident. It's been acknowledged. I can see the latest status update. Now I can provide a much better customer support experience. And I don't have to pass this up the chain, which is very expensive in the customer support world. Or, hey, there's nothing here. I can actually raise an incident and get the right people involved instead of, hunting and pecking around or just hoping that someone has figured out that that part of the website or that service isn't working. And now let me see if I have to wait until I learn something, right? It's a very passive place to be that doesn't provide a very good experience.
I love the fact that you mentioned event-driven approach, because I think that's also one of the key elements that a lot of organizations in general are looking, because it also provides for agility. As you mentioned, right? Like you can quickly react, not only get notified to events, but also actually take some actionable items on those. So
Yeah.
love the fact that your EDA is the new key there.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool place for folks to go. That's like the future, right? Where, I even remember, talking to a customer and they're like, what I really want are incidents that resolve themselves.
Yep.
And in order to have that, you do need to connect these dots. You need to connect, like, where is the signal going to come from? And then now how can I take trusted actions to, either investigate further or actually, hey, like, we know that we can safely restart that node. Let's do that and see if we can restore the service. And that can really go a long way to just putting a lot of the incidents that are waking people up at 3 a.m. And taking it off their plate, right? Or saving that. So it's like, hey, things are going well and you've got a lot of, error budget left. Like, you don't need to get up at 3 a.m.
Which I'm sure every on-call would really, really appreciate.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Well, so some of the other things, just to kind of walk through and prepare for the demo that Vin's pulled together, if that'd be useful, I can kind of walk through and just give a preview of what you're going to see as Vin takes us through. Is this a good time to do that? You tell me.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect time, because I think we're all excited to just see it all in action.
Okay, awesome. Real quick, because there's just no way to cover every scenario and every feature in one single demo. I think we've tried a couple of times, and it just becomes a lot to swallow at once. So I just want to call out, but wait, there's more. Before we get into things, a couple weeks ago, we did another demo roundup, and in particular, like, that takes a very different scenario than what we're going to do today. And so I thought this is a good complement to what you're going to see today. If you're like, wait, I want to hear about when the customer support agent actually is triggering things, that's a great place to see it. And a few other things that they go deeper on. So that's just, if there's one other thing that you go back and watch. The other thing, of course, we've got our community forums. We have our Twitch channel. These are all great places to tune in regularly and ask questions, learn more, and keep on top of things. So just a quick kind of plug for that, because there's always more. This is not everything. But let's take a look at what we're going to see today. And it follows that a little bit of that flow that I just talked about But I'm going to call out some of the features that you're going to see in action and what they're doing. So first, we're going to see our AIOps alert grouping in action. And this is that, this is my kind of goofy picture with all those little bits of data coming into the funnel. And this is where it's getting grouped and correlated across potentially like all these different monitoring services and layers, so that you're not getting hit with a ton of noise. And there's a number of different sort of modes and ways that it's doing this. And Vin's got an interesting backstory on actually how the teams, our internal data science teams, have built even the models that work on this particular problem. But that's kind of where it starts. And then from there, it's going to flow into event orchestration, which is kind of the successor to event rules, if you're familiar with PagerDuty. But essentially, it's really almost like a full conditional language, if you will, that allows you to define like how do you want different events handled. And so you can get really sophisticated with how you want those handled. And you can use these as, I want to enrich this alert. So, one of the demos we did a little while ago was kind of focused on a Kubernetes scenario. And one of the things is like, well, I want to enrich the alert with what the pod name is, right? That's something that's often, you kind of need that information and it slows you down to have to go digging for it. So the idea of enrichment is certainly part of it, but then also just how are you going to route and handle those events? So that's what's going to happen next. And then you'll see kind of to that point of event-driven automation, how when those conditions are met, it's like, we're going to go trigger some diagnostics to go run. And that's just an automated run book that's already been built and we've kind of said, listen, when these are met, go run that diagnostic. So this is really, really helpful to be able to just capture more data, not have to interrupt a bunch of other teams. Also, sometimes you can do state capture really close to the time of the incident, which even if you kind of like, hey, we did a Band-Aid fix, we restored it, but we've captured the state of the system so that we can go back and do deeper root cause analysis and find the better long-term fix. But in the heat of the moment, we don't necessarily have time to do all of that. But what would really help us is if we've captured that data, right? It's like the crime scene. Can we get the evidence so that we can later go and really find the smoking gun? Then the next thing is like, okay, now that on-call expert gets pulled in, and what you can see is that they're not getting pulled in as like the first step. They're getting pulled in quite deep into this process where AI and automation has already done a ton of heavy lifting, and they want to take some actions. And they might run some more diagnostics, but at one point they're like, okay, I want to run kind of a standard set of actions, in terms of how we're going to respond to this, given the severity of what it is, or I just need certain other responders involved. So this is where they're going to run an incident workflow, and that'll have, you can predefine incident workflows for different scenarios. You can have them triggered by, hey, if something gets bumped up to a P1, it's just going to automatically trigger the workflow. In this case, we're going to see a manual trigger, just as like that's another scenario where you can have that. We demoed the other week, that other demo, you can see how someone in customer support, they can actually trigger workflows. This is some new recent capabilities we've added. And then from there, now they're ready to run a remediation, which again is going to be an automated run book. And so you're going to see how they're going to come in and say, all right, it's time to actually try to put a fix in place. But we've got this already spelled out how we do it, and we can do it in a really consistent way. And by the way, it's also going to be captured as in an audit trail of these are all the automations that have been run. And that can be really useful from a compliance perspective. And then finally, the incident's been resolved, and there's that best practice that we've probably all heard about around generating a post-mortem, right? You need to draft a post-mortem, document it, and see what can we learn from this. But that's often a lot of work. And so here we're going to see how generative AI can come into play and actually help take that first pass at drafting the postmortem, which you can go back and see and edit and update for like, okay, it just takes that first blank page part of the job off of the plate of the responder.
So no need to handle and write lengthy documents then.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, or imagine you're just editing it.
Yeah.
Because the AI has sort of drafted it for you, and you can give it a sanity check.
Nice.
That's
So
some
does that-
great heavy lifting taken care of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Does that also include like some form of analytics? Like if I'm an operations manager and I do want to look into like the historical incidents that happened, let's say in the past month, how many incidents happened that are prior P0 that affected my particular solution or like Kubernetes cluster? Is that
Yeah.
also?
So we've actually just announced last week how we've expanded the access and upgraded the analytics in the platform. And so it's for exactly what you're talking about. You can look at the insights reports around like, show me service performance and show me like, see the hot spots of like, okay, this particular service is like perpetually dying on us, like we can bring it back and we've got, good mean time to acknowledge and a good mean time to resolution, but it'd be really great if this thing wasn't, keeling over on us every couple of days or weeks or something. So that's like a good hotspot flag, sort of like a filter to use on, hey, if we really need to pay down some tech debt, but we don't have time to fix it all, like what should we fix? Probably that service that's having a lot of recurring issues. And then you can also look at team health and understand who are the responders on my team who are getting paged at 3 a.m. on a regular basis. And let's figure out why, as what's going on, or how do we balance across the team so they get a little bit of a break and aren't getting burnt out, and a bunch of other different like reports and filters.
I bet that's going to be handy for a lot of operations manager out there.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really useful for just folks who, whether they own a service or they're looking at things from a, across like a whole set of services, the sort of the SRE mode where
Right.
they're supporting a lot and want to understand where those hot spots are.
That's impressive.
Yeah, that was it for just my sort of quick slide build. Quick, not so quick. To just prepare, because I think it's going to be a lot more fun when Vinh takes us through, but I think sometimes it helps to just know what you're looking at.
Yeah, no, I think this was really helpful to basically understand how it works and what kind of problems does it solve. Because I'm pretty sure like we all try to understand when we're trying to understand a solution, we first really try to understand what exactly is doing and what purpose is it serving. So this was really helpful. Yeah, I think I'm pretty sure I'm excited to see the demo and see it all in action. So whenever you're ready, when.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right. So let me get my screen set up, share, and we'll go to what Dormain just described, the PagerDuty solution called Operation Cloud. And I will try to follow the step that she laid out in her screen slideshow. So the first thing I think, I want to kind of set the stage is that this particular example in my demo environment, what I want to show to the team is basically integration with CloudWatch that basically monitoring SageMaker, which is a machine learning model building and solutions, right? So basically, I do a little bit homework and research on how SageMaker work, and apart from the development team basically building data model and building machine learning type model, there's a lot of things that they run into while they're performing their task, right? So for example, if the model fail, what are some of the steps that they perform to basically resolve specific issue? And from there, I capture those type of data and basically tie that back to the piece that the Dormain was talking about, right? Event-driven automations, right? Rather than for someone, receive a call saying that, hey, I got an issue, either my model is slow or it time out or for whatever reasons, right? What are some of these steps that they need to perform, right? So these are all the signal that's coming in that can be integrated from SageMaker to CloudWatch to monitoring two components, right? The infrastructure, three components, resource utilization, log monitoring, as well as data model drip type related signal, right? And in this example, I capture just the resource utilization as well as the data model issue, right? And if you look at it, like Dormain was saying, all the signal coming in, whether it's from AWS or from other monitoring and observability tool out there that our customers utilize, right? The key thing is there's so many data coming in to correlate these data or look manually is next to impossible, right? So this is where we have the AIOps capability that basically take in all these alerts coming in from CloudWatch, from EventBridge, or other monitoring source, and be able to look at the monitoring, the alert data, and basically say, hey, is actually impact a specific service, right? And in this, all these alerts are actually coming in within a specific time window, right? This is how our AIOps solution work. We basically take a look at all the alert coming in, looking at the text similarity in the descriptions of the alert, as well as the time window, and be able to leverage AI to correlate them. And I was mentioned to Dormain a little bit earlier, these models that build out the correlation in the PagerDuty environment is actually use SageMaker, right? Our machine learning and AI team basically use SageMaker to build out the correlation model. As all the data is coming in, they leverage different algorithm within the model to basically say correlate these alerts together, right? So in this example, I'm going to expand that. There's 3 alerts coming in that basically relating to SageMaker, whether it's a training job, status change, whether it's the model that get deployed fail in production, whether there's experience of latency. These are all the data we capture relating to a specific services, and be able to correlate them and creating a single incident, right? The same thing with the infrastructure piece, right? If there is issue with no space left on the device, or if there is a memory that causes a specific threshold, or CPU cause a high CPU alert, right? Every one of these monitoring relating to a specific resource or specific system, we're able to basically correlate them and create a single alert. This is what the power of AI is, right? It's to correlate these alerts so that no one get paged for 4 different incidents, right? We group them together and basically create an incident where we can actually correlate them together, right? So this is the first part of the machine learning piece, right? So I'm going to drill into a specific incident and talk a little bit about, beside correlating all these alerts and creating an incident, what else can we do, right? So you see that this particular incident, we know who we need to route this incident to based on the service that is being impacted, right? So I had an impacting service that is basically the SageMaker machine learning service. But underneath this machine learning service, there's a broader impacting business service called streaming services, right? Because streaming a business service could have a lot of different technical service, right? We are able to recognize that, the streaming service, the specific services underneath that business service is actually, having some issue, right? Who we need to escalate this particular service to, who is on call. This is the piece that someone comment that it woke you up 3 o'clock, a.m. in the morning, right? We get past that, and we're hoping to basically leverage automation to help solve that specific problem, so it doesn't wake you up at 3 in the morning. And I'll talk a little bit about that, right? Not only that we get alert from CloudWatch, but we can also get any information that actually relating to change, right? I also integrate with GitHub that basically any change happening within this particular service, that change signal also sent into PagerDuty, right? Now, change pretty much, is part of every issue in many organizations, right? Someone makes some change, it potentially create some issue, right? Now, the reason that this is actually helpful, if I'm looking at an incident and I'm having all kinds of issue that is reporting from all my monitoring tool relating to latency with a model, a job fail or whatever, right? Was there any change? The first question that we need to know is, was there any change in this particular, applications, right?
Yeah.
That's the type of stuff that we need to know, right? So change plays a major role in any incident issue problems, right? So having the change data is really helpful for the first responder to look at, right? Any question? I'll pause there.
No, I was just going to put like an emphasis on that. I think, there was someone recently, it was like, hey, what do you do when you're having an incident, right? It's best practice. And it's always like, well, there's 3 things every time, right? It's like, where's the alert coming from? What's the source? What are the recent changes? And then I'm going to want to go like dig into some logs.
Exactly.
It's like, those are the, it's 1, 2, 3, like every single time it's kind of that same pattern. And so just trying to like double click on that, being able to have that pulled together. And then the idea of like, the next thing you're going to want to do is look at the logs. Like, why not have that go pulled automatically?
Yep, exactly. Run some command to gather additional information, right? This is the piece that will tie back into it a little bit when we talk about event-driven event orchestrations, right? The other thing that I want to emphasize on, machine learning and AI, not only that we help collating alert together and group them to reduce noise, right? Because, the platform, store a lot of the historical data, right? One of the things that I think Aniket mentioned, like, what else can you look at from a historical perspective, right? So basically, we also had the capability to look at past incident. And I, feel like past incident is actually a really good thing for, have a couple things that I believe that is really beneficial to a lot of the first responder, right? The first thing I always talk about is that if I have an incident and I'm new as a first responder, I just onboard, to a new company, and I own this particular incident, one of the first thing I'm going to look at is, has this happened before? And if it happened before, who was assigned to for this particular incident? And then also look at like how long does this, like there's 4 incidents happen now for the last week, right? And I want to know for this particular incident, who solved this problem the fastest, right? So Vinh trend happened to be me, and I solved this problem in a minute. I can actually drill into this particular incident and look at the timeline and see how this incident get resolved, right? Like Aniket talked about, asked earlier, like, do you keep historical, information about a specific incident that's solved by, someone previously, and what are the steps that captured during this problem? You can actually drill into this and look at, well, what did Vinh do last time? And you can look at the timeline, and the timeline will basically show you the information about, how this incident get resolved, right? So that's one thing that past incident actually help. The other thing that I feel like past incident actually really helpful is if I look at past incident and I look at, a time window of, let's say 6 months or so on, and I'm like, this particular application was running fine the last few months. This past couple of weeks, there's a lot of issue, whether it's memory issue, CPU issue, model latency running, job running slow, stuff like that, right? The first thing I want to know is that this is happening often enough. The first question I would ask is that, hey, the change that we made a week ago for this particular application, is that an issue, potentially with the deployment of the new app, right? The new versions of the app or something like that, right? So past incident help not only help, give, the responder information about how this problem was resolved in the past, a quicker way to, follow the step to get it done, but also serve the purpose of looking at the historical data. Maybe we should create a problem for the developer to review the last deployment of the applications, right? So that's what, part of the AI is to bring in these type of data and basically help, the organization look at, some of these issue in the past, right? The other thing that our AI solution also surface up is, okay, I got an issue for this particular incident that basically had, experienced high latency. What other issue is reporting from CloudWatch about the infrastructure that this particular application run, right? On, right? So we'll surface up any related incident that tie to this specific service. And now in this example, I only had one incident, which is you saw earlier, that has high CPU alert. And in this high CPU alert, there's also some other memory issue and some other disk storage issue and all that, right? So now you can actually see, hey, all these things are related together, and we basically leverage AI to bring them all in for a specific incident, rather than, a bunch of team get escalated for different incident, and then you have to call a bunch of people into a meeting, and that's the purpose of AI, this capability, right? Any questions here? I want to pause and see if there's any question, Dormain or Rachel or Aniket, that I can explain.
I was just going to poke a little bit at the so you've got the past incidents and then the related incidents, and the related incidents are like, these are open active incidents happening right now.
That is correct.
Yeah, that your incident is somehow like we detect a correlation and a connection between these.
That's correct. Yeah. So before I talk about the right hand side, these information, I like to go into the event-driven orchestrations, right? So you get all these signal coming in, the AI engine correlate this, right? How does the signal get in the first place? And how do you route these signal to the right service, right? And then how do you bring in additional data? This is where event orchestration is the power. And I really love about this capability. The reason I love this capability is that you can send in any type of monitoring. In this example, I send in CloudWatch, and I also send in AWS event bridge data, right? So what is the signal and there's an integration point, there's a REST endpoint where all these data come in, right? Now, once these data come in from CloudWatch, then we can actually make decisions of how data get routed to different orchestration. And I'll touch on what this means, right? So in this particular demo environment, I basically look at the payload of the alert, right? And you can actually look at the raw data that's coming in from your monitoring solution, and you can actually leverage these content to make a decisions of how to route these data. And in this example, I basically say, hey, there's two types of data. The component is actually the JSON payload that describe whether it's infrastructure monitoring or machine learning model, right? So based on the component value, I make a decision to route it. If it's model related, I route it to this particular orchestration. If it is infrastructure related, CPU disk, whatever infrastructure monitoring that CloudWatch sent to me, I'll route it to the infrastructure orchestration. And the reason I route it this way, and by the way, you can make decisions on how these data route based on your application behavior, based on your organization practice. But for the demo purpose, I just separate model from infrastructure, and then that way I can tie specific automation against each of these orchestration. So let's concentrating on, suppose that I had a lot coming in that impacting my machine learning model. What can I do, right? So it basically say, hey, if the component equal model related, send it to this particular orchestration that impact this particular service, and then there's things that you can evaluate. For example, I can basically say, hey, if there is information or any tag that basically say this is a production data, I can actually change the priority to P2, so that it get the attention of the responder. If it is a dev environment, maybe I want to do something different, right? Maybe I want to ignore the alert altogether. Maybe I want to delay the alert. Whatever method you want to do, you can actually make that decision based on the data coming in. In this example, I basically say, hey, if it's a dev environment, I just want to suppress the alert so that it doesn't create an incident.
We lost Vinh there for a while.
Yeah.
Evaluating the data coming in. If it's if it's production, I want to set this to a P2, or maybe make some other decisions, right? And then at the same time, in the event orchestration rule, you can actually transform the payload that coming in, right? A lot of time people say CloudWatch had a lot of data, really good, useful data, but I want to make it, I want to make the description a little bit readable, or add some stuff, right? You can actually perform transformation, extracting data from the payload. In this example, I just want to extract a piece of data about the endpoint so that I can actually use the endpoint to run specific automation command for that particular endpoint, right? So I call it, use any kind of regular expression to go and extract the endpoint data here, and then basically create a custom variable called instant name. And now I, in my incident data, I had an custom detail payload that basically is a instant name, which is the endpoint name, right? So you can do a lot of stuff with transformation. This is a really simple example of the transformation. Then the next thing you can do is you can actually graphically build out these workflow. And I basically say, hey, if I see that this is a production environment, and I had an alert name that basically say training model fail, when it matched this particular condition, this is what I want to run. I want to go and run an automation that basically check the status of the notebook instant, right? Now, this is an automation that built with our process automation solution, right? So there's a bunch of steps that we build, and I'll walk to what exactly is this automation do. But once you build the automation in the process automation, you can actually leverage event orchestration to call those automations so that those automations can be run automatically. This is the part where Domain was saying that, hey, why not bring in the diagnostic data so that when I get an incident, I don't have to go and log into a system or even remember what system to log into and run specific, command to get those data, right? Why not capture that in an automation and be able to leverage event-driven automation first, right? So that's one example. The other example is maybe, I also want to do something like go out, and if it match like model slow, this might have something to do with maybe memory utilization. Memory is actually don't have enough memory to run this model. Maybe I want to, rather than log into the system you run a PS command to grab some, process information data. Why not build that automation to go out there and grab this, right? This is the power of event orchestrations, right? We use this to basically, do the event-driven automation first, right? Before you route to another person. One comment from a gentleman about PagerDuty wake me up 3 o'clock in the morning. I was working with a customer, basically same issue. The thing is, I don't want my database team get paged 3 o'clock in the morning because a temporary, a disk space, full, right? Why not have an automation when you see that database job fail or whatever that message to go out and run a delete temporary file or something like that, and then resolve that incident instead of paging someone 3 o'clock in the morning for disk space full, right? That's the type of stuff that we want to solve for our customers so we can stop waking people up 3 a.m. in the morning for something silly like that, right? So this is basically how you can actually build and deploy automation. So let's get back to the incident itself.
It's Vin, it's almost like if you're really doing this with everything that's brought to bear, like you actually hear from PagerDuty less. When you do,
exactly,
you've got superpowers, right? Because like you've got all this context and data at your fingertips, but like the other really great result is you'd be getting paged less, ironically.
Yep, exactly. So
I can see, Aniket, you've got a question, yeah.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So if you can go to the tab where you were showing the workflow.
Yes.
So can I have like parallel service orchestration? So for example, I see that that tab where I see event created an incident on the service. So if I want to essentially have like an and operation, if this condition and some other service, then only set a priority. Yeah, exactly. So basically what my question is like,
yes,
are these
so right here,
or sorry,
right? So this is where you have that if and else, right? Condition. Is that what you were looking for?
yes, but so this is essentially if else, but can I have potentially like an and operation if both those conditions meet?
Yes, absolutely. So for example, in here you say if is this is a production environment, maybe some other payload data here that say something like model training failure, right? So you can end as many conditions as you want.
That's pretty neat.
Okay, so you can build workflow, and there's also more complicated stuff where you can actually go into the writing the rule itself, but I always avoid using this type of advanced things. I just basically just like, hey, I want to add something to it, and change the, and then you can, if you mess up on the condition, you can just basically delete them again. So
that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's also, to what Vinh was pointing out there, it's like this is also all supported in our Terraform provider as well.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's another way of just in terms of building rules out, especially for SREs who might have a lot of different services. So we have global event orchestration where you're like, we have some practices that we want to run against everything, but then there might be things that are just service specific, right? So what he's showing here, where it's like, we're really looking at like this SageMaker kind of environment, and there's some very specific things that only apply to that service, but there might be some global stuff that like an SRE team wants to, hey, we want to enrich everything this way.
Got it.
Yep, and that's a really good add to Dormain, is that a lot of my customer basically say, oh, this is like a lot of work, but basically you can build these things and you can source it from Terraform. We had a lot of customers basically use that for this particular purpose, for building out the environment instead of using the UI. Okay, great question, thank you. So now I just walk you to the two example where it is a priority queue. I set a priority queue. You can see that in my incident, that is a P2, right? The other piece of this is basically, I basically run a health check and the notebook instant. I also run a get process info or this check, get additional process information. And this is where you see these data show up in the incident, because it basically follow that workflow and say, hey, the alert come in, it impacting the SageMaker ML orchestration, and the information in the payload basically describe it, a specific task that I need to run the automation. One of them is basically running, hey, tell me, the top 10 process that's consuming memory, as well as CPU time, right? Also, I had a lockdown here that basically say, the status change, right? So if you look at one of the alerts, say the status change or the data load model fail, maybe I should just run like a SageMaker API that basically say, hey, what is the instance status today? And this is basically a command that you can run to describe the instance. And it happened that, well, looking at this, my instance is actually not running right now. Probably that's the reason that's causing all of these things, right? So this test NB is actually one of the model that's not healthy. So all these information surface up, and it's really, helping the responder reduce the time to go and run these commands, or even figure out what are some of the commands that I need to run to basically help me identify what exactly is the problem, right? So let's say if I am, okay, so then basically the information is available, and then I look at this, I say, we got a change here on the model, we got all these issues. We see that the relating issue also eat into my infrastructure resource, right? And I had a notebook stop. I don't know how to resolve this issue, and I need to get help, right? A lot of time organizations have these like playbook, right? They follow specific, X step when there's a issue impacting production and it's a priority to productions, right? They need to bring in the right resource. They need to create a conference bridge. They want people to join this conference bridge to help resolve this issue, right? All those steps can be automated. And that's the next thing that I want to talk about, is basically the incident workflows, right? Automations, right? Dormain talked about there's different way you can actually build out incident workflow. I had a bunch of incident workflow that build out. Some of them one of them I basically say, hey, if someone switched the incident to a P1, automatically run all of these things. Or it's a self-service things, right? So I'll walk you through this. But the idea of an incident workflow is to basically say, what are some of the steps that you want to do, right? In this example, I want to actually bring in other people to help me to resolve this issue, right? I also want to communicate to the people this particular service is impacting, right? My stakeholder, maybe other team, line of business owners, right? I also want to add a conflict bridge, and I also want to send a status update to notify people who actually subscribe to the status of any issue with this specific service, right? All of these things can be automated and by a click of the button, right? So I'll demonstrate, the one that basically, run this workflows, right? So for example, I had this manual incident workflow that you can manually trigger, or I can change the priority to P1, it automatically trigger, right? But for the purpose of this, let's run this workflow, right? And let's see what this workflow actually do, right? So if I run this workflow, based on the step that I described on this major incident workflow, it's going to do 4 things, right? It's going to add a bunch of other people to this particular, incident. It's also going to, yeah, my phone is ringing like crazy, right? Because a bunch of responder tied to my cell phone. So you'll see that the first thing it does, the incident workflow is basically add, the DevOps team as well as add a database team, right? And not only that it add these team, but it actually identify who is on call right now. In this example, Bill Jones is on call, and basically, page Bill so that he can actually join this Zoom bridge, right? The second thing that the major incident workflow do is basically add a Zoom bridge or a team or charm, whatever confident, method solution that you're using today, right? Okay, so now all of these things are, basically get include in this, right? Also, in the status page, if you in an organization who doesn't use PagerDuty, but they subscribe to your services, it basically also update the status page, basically saying that, hey, you know what, the streaming service, there's an incident, with this particular issue, and someone is actually working on this right now, looking at it. So it gives a status update or whatever status update you want to communicate to your internal or your external customer, right? So that's another powerful tool that basically automate a playbook when a service become a P1 or at a high level where you want to bring in people. Any questions here?
So in terms of like the communicating to the customers, so like different organizations use different ticketing systems or different CRM systems to relay these incidents. So
Yep.
what kind of ticketing systems are currently supported with PagerDuty?
Yeah. So from an ITSM perspective, we can actually integrate with ServiceNow. We can integrate with Zendesk. And from a CSM perspective, customer support service management, we got Salesforce as well as some of the other solutions like ServiceNow also had a CSM solutions as well, right? So for example, this is an integration with Salesforce that basically say, hey, when you set up the integration with Salesforce, there's two things that we basically integrate with, right? The status page, like what I saw in the PagerDuty UI, as well as it as well show up in the ServiceNow integration. So if I'm a customer support agent and I had a bunch of phone calls from external customers saying that, hey, I got an issue with my specific service, the customer support agent creating a case will automatically will know that there's an issue that the operation team is working on, right? They can still log a case from the customer calling in. Maybe they say that they can't get their top 10 movie recommendation because the machine learning model didn't spit up that kind of information for them, right? The customer support agent can actually intelligently answer a question like, hey, we're totally aware of that problem, or I'll log a case for you, or I'll tie your case to the incident. And basically, as soon as the incident resolved, you can actually go and look at our status page for external customer, and we'll update the external status page, right? So not only that is integrated with Salesforce, so that the customer support agent can break the silo of not aware of what's going on with the operation team, right? So now they're intelligently able to communicate with the customer that, hey, we're aware of this issue. This is, it's been, assigned and it's been worked on, and we'll inform you as soon as the service is up, right? The other piece that I actually had set up in this environment, I hope is still there, is basically an external status page, right? So for example, if I am a customer subscribing to the streaming service and I want to know if there's any issue, I can actually go to the streaming service external page and I can see that, hey, there's some issue here, right? I send the incident here, but the external service page could be as simple as streaming services down, right? It doesn't have to post any specific IT related issue. It could just basically say, have a status page that basically says streaming services down. Anybody who's subscribed to see this particular service will basically see that their streaming service is down. This is how customer, is keep up to date, as well as, if customer is calling in, the customer support agent can intelligently, update them with the status, tell them that, hey, we know this issue, right? Thanks for calling in. We'll let you know as soon as it's resolved, or take the information and link this information, this particular case, back to the incident record, so that the operation team know that it's impacting a lot of customers, right? So that's the piece that I want to kind of touch on in terms of how it tied to customer service management solutions.
Awesome. If just want to say, if you're just tuning in right now, to welcome to Howdy Partner, we have PagerDuty with us, Dormain and Vinh, and we're actually seeing the PagerDuty Operations Cloud demo in action.
Yep. Okay. I'm gonna ask Dormain, there's anything else that I missed that I need to touch on?
Well, let's see, we were at the incident workflow. We took some really fun little detours there into the the Salesforce Service Cloud integration and the status page that wasn't even on like the original agenda, but it's great. So I think now we're kind of at the point where, the responders run that major incident workflow, which kind of pulls in the other stakeholders and automates a bunch of those actions, a bunch of best practices. And maybe they've gotten kind of the confirmation on like, yeah, this is how you can remediate this problem. So what do they do from here?
So I'm going to get to that right now. So, the first part of automation that tied to event-driven orchestration is basically surface up all the diagnostic data, right? This doesn't have to be, this could be a command, this could be a script, this could be, integrating with some other tool and so on, right? Let's say we all join the conference bridge and we made a decision that, hey, you know what? This particular new model that we just deployed is causing problem. In order for us to resolve this issue, maybe we need to either restarting this particular service that is down, right? Rather than getting getting someone to log into the system and run specific command to restarting the service, why don't we give that power to the team that basically that is authorized to run these type of automations, right? So in this example, I basically build out like what are some of the actions that the responder can run, right? So I had like 3 different actions, right? What 2 of them is already execute and basically push the data here. The one that I want to run manually is basically restarting this particular service that is down right now, right? So you can actually run it from the PagerDuty UI, or better yet, we integrating with chat app. We had a really nice mobile phone, and I decided that, hey, you know what? I think that for this particular issue, I would like to run. I'm actually away. It's my dinner time, and I'm out eating dinner, but I need to perform this step. Maybe what I'll do is I'll run it. I have my mobile phone with me. I got Slacks going on my mobile phone, and I can actually get into my Slack and basically say, hey, this issue, I can actually run it from my Slack or my mobile phone, right? So I'm basically going to say, hey, go and run this particular job for me to restarting the service, so that it will bring everything, bring the service back up, right? So I just ran this automation workflow from Slack, which is basically the same way that you would run it from this run action piece. And once this is done, you'll see that it keep the incident update as a star notebook incident in progress. And in my job, I actually have this particular workflow in the background. And this is basically say that, hey, it's running that. Oh, shoot, it locked me out. But the idea here is that these jobs would get executed. And this is a job that basically, ran in the process automation side, right? There's a bunch of steps describing the SageMaker notebook instance, update my instance node in my instance record, and then capture any service status or stuff like that. And you see that red X bar or green check bar. These are the steps that basically update the instance record. So you can see that it could be a single step type of job. It could be a multi-dimensional type of job, right? And and speaking about job, right? This is the automation piece. This is what we call runbook automations. That piece that Dormain was talking about. You can build simple job. You can build if-then condition. Like for example, you can run describing notebook, update the PagerDuty incident, and you can capture the information like, hey, is the status running or stop? And based on the value, if it's stop, I want to take this brand to execute these 2 steps. If it's in service or pending, I want to run these 2 steps, right? So you can build simple workflow. You can build complex workflow. The process automation workflow itself is probably take some time to just like walk through that. So I just give you a flavor of how automation work. But if you guys are interested to dive in deeper into process automation, how jobs get built, and how automation work, I definitely can spend some time talking about that. But the idea here is basically it will run to this workflow, execute these steps. This example is a simple example, right? I just run AWS CLI SageMaker describe notebook instance, and here's my instance name. Remember that that event orchestration where I basically say extracting data to create a variable. That variable is basically passed into this job. Basically say, hey, go run, go describe the notebook instance name test -nb, right? Well, if you had like hundreds of different notebook instance out there, you really want a job that can actually run describe on all the different type of instance, right? Not like this is how you pass in parameter. Anyway, so come back here, it run the instant data and it say, oh, wait.
Yeah, I just want to, like, I realized something that when you were back on that screen and it kind of showed like almost like the decision tree.
Yes.
Yeah, process flow, like something that I think is really important to understand about, you know, the underlying sort of engine that PagerDuty has is something that it's uniquely really good at, is that sort of whole issue where you have to cross team boundaries. And the idea of like, where, you know, sure, some people who are like, I own the system, I have the login, but, you know, I don't want to get interrupted every single time someone needs something done, or, you know, so that idea of like, how do you expose these things, but in a really safe way, right? Where you're not, sure, we can do that, but we have to hand out the keys to like all these people. And like, you don't want to be doing that, right? There's just, and in regulated environments, there can be a lot of rules around. It's like, hey, the number of people or who's allowed to touch a production system can be very strict. And so how do you control that access, but still allow like someone else to get what they need to get done?
Yep.
And so that, like, it's kind of I think of it almost like it's like a governance framework around the automation. And you can also like use that and wrap around, like you've got a chef cookbook or like a, you know, Ansible playbook or whatever. Like you might have other pockets where you're like, oh, I've already automated this step, but now I want to plug that into this decision tree. And so you're adding both the sort of click up of, hey, this is part of something bigger, which right now, if you ask those teams, they might say, well, yeah, we have something automated, but those 7 steps would require 7 different people to be involved. And so that's really, I don't know, I just wanted to call that out, that like, that's a bit of a shift from just like, it's not just writing down these steps, you're providing that really controlled access. And it doesn't matter if it's like that's a cloud service or it's running behind a firewall. All of these things, because that's what our customers are dealing with, is they've got infrastructure all over the place. They have lots of different teams that own things. They have regulation and compliance that says so-and-so can't access that environment. Only certain people. And like, if anyone accesses that environment, it has to be logged in a very particular way. And like a really easy way to do that is to make it a machine only like access point. And so that's a big thing that just this is particularly good at.
Yep, and that's really important. Thanks, Dormain, for pointing this out. For example, AWS SageMaker describe, right? To run any AWS CLI, you know, I mean, first of all, you have to know the command. Second, you have to have access to something like this to run specific command, right? And these are privileged command, right? The same thing with like native OS type of command. Same thing. You have to have credential to log in, and the specific thing that you can do and the specific thing that you cannot do. And we basically take those type of you know, access and centralize this, you know, and set this up within the process automation side. And this is, you know, there's a lot of capability on beside the job to configure who had access to it, what credential, where the credential store, and all those type of informations, right? So good, thanks for bringing that up. Okay, so to get back to this, now that I ran that job and we starting this, test notebooks is in pending state. So one of the check that I had is that, hey, if it's pending and in service, that basically means that my notebook's instance is back up and running and it's healthy. And then your monitoring solution probably would come in and a few minutes later and basically say, oh, I don't have that issue anymore, and just mark the incident resolved, right? So if I go back to the the all incident, and it basically resolve all my incident, right? That's basically the power of Operation Cloud. And the last thing that I want to talk about is basically tie that back into Gen AI postmortem, right? So I got an issue resolved, but I really want to document a postmortem, right? So I can actually create a postmortem report. Now, this is the thing that, this is new stuff that that PagerDuty is actually incorporate some of the Gen AI capability into 3 different areas. One of the areas basically generating postmortem automatically based on the alert data, based on the diagnostic data, and some maybe some of the note that you capture, right? So while this is generating, I want to kind of go over to another area of Gen AI that we invest in, and that's basically in the job area, right? In the process automation area, a lot of time people say, well, I don't even know how to start a new job. Is there any recommendation, or is there anything that we can help out? We actually invest a lot in terms of Gen AI in not only in the AI app side or automate incident response side, but we also invested in the automation piece, right? You can actually try to basically generating a automation job. Let me, and we basically do like give example of different category. Maybe it's a database job. Maybe I want to basically create a job that go and query my SQL database, and I don't know how to go about that. You can actually leverage Gen AI to basically go and generating an example of steps of an automated job, right? So this is what you can do with automations. So let me get back to the postmortem piece, right? Now that I finished generate, this is what it create. It basically say, during this incident, it was discovered that model blah, 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 deploy on endpoint test was experiencing high latency. It grabbed a lot of the data from the alert payload, and it basically describe and creating a summary for you in the postmortem node. And then it tell you what service impacted, some information about what went well, what didn't go well, and then add item. Now, and then the timing, right? So it was incident get triggered. It was acknowledged by Bill, acknowledged by Vinh, and there was an major incident workflow triggered by Vinh Tran, and then it requests these resource, and then there's a job running to restarting the notebook instant. All these steps get captured in creating a sample draft postmortem document. Now you can go and edit this report, make any changes if you want, and basically decide that, hey, you know what, this document is good enough. I'm going to basically say that I review it and publish it, right, and save it, right? Now you got a postmortem generate without typing a bunch of stuff, and remember, hey, what exactly we do, and it basically capture all the steps here for you. That is basically all the stuff that I want to share with the team today. And let me know if there's any questions.
Awesome. Yeah, I think this generative AI piece was definitely it's gonna reduce a lot of overhead and writing tons and tons of documents and COE reports. So
yeah,
it's really exciting to see.
Yeah, I think I forgot one thing that Dormain mentioned. That's the analytic piece, and I think I still have time. I'll go over that a little bit. So with all the data in Operation Cloud, if you go and look at analytic, we had a bunch of basically report dashboard, but I'll just highlight really quickly on a couple report that help improve efficiency, right? So in this example, you go into the analytic insight, you can see the level of incidents, right, for over a specific time frame, like 7 day like this month of custom range day range, right? You can basically select your team or all team, right? So select all, and it basically give you an example of the incident volume over this period, right? So it give you an idea why August 28, why you got 64 incidents. What is the reason for that? And I think you can look at it, right? So, and then it also tell you that, hey, what are some of the incidents and what are their priority, who is actually resolving it, how long it takes them to acknowledge, how long it takes them to repair, to resolve it, and so on and so on, right? So the incident activity is one, report that basically give you that type of information. The other thing that I want to look at is basically like service performance, right? You can actually look at the different services, SageMaker, and all these, and then you can also see a pattern of it. Now, my demo environment doesn't have a lot of data, right? Just imagine this is actually in a production environment, and there's a lot of data out there, and you can see what service is the most noisier, and maybe there's some improvement that we can actually learn from, from identify the service that is actually causing issue, right? Also responder, right? Responder is a good tab, right? If you look at this, Vinh Tran actually is probably like born out by now. He's like got all the incident assigning to him, right? So if you look at an organization and you got one guy that had a lot of incident assigned to him, you got to start looking at, did I make my schedule correctly? Why is this guy keep getting paged, right? Not only getting paged, like one of the common earlier, get paged 3 o'clock in the morning. Come on, we got to fix that issue, right? So this is good report, good data to go and look at and how drive some process improvement and all that.
Yeah, this is to the question you asked earlier, Aniket, about, just, okay, so you have the post-mortem, but how do you step back and take a bigger, broader look and find like the patterns?
Yeah.
The new insights reports. And so for, all the folks tuning in who have PagerDuty, this is actually pretty recent that we've added, for a lot of folks who are on like business and the professional level plans. Go log in and check it out, because you'll be able to start to see these types of insights reports in the analytics tab. Have some fun with that. Like not too much fun, but have a little bit of fun, and see what you can learn.
Yeah, no, I think this is like having an analytics dashboard, or like a place where you can see metrics is really helpful if you just want to take a glance rather than read the entire report, as some operations leader might typically prefer to quickly glance at what exactly is going on. What kind of service downtime are we seeing? Who's handling, as Vinh mentioned, who's getting paged the most? So this is really exciting. This is really fun.
Yeah, and that's the last P that I want to solve. Turn it back to you.
Awesome. Well, I also wanted to share one link that where you can actually see what all services and what all platforms does PagerDuty integrates in. So that being said, thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Dormain. Thanks a lot, Vinh, for being on the show. I'm pretty sure a lot of our viewers loved the demo, loved getting an insight on how to better handle their entire operations. So this was definitely fun.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Also, how to make it easier using this.
Yes.
Yeah. What's the irony is, like, to walk through and talk and explain everything, like, you take an hour to do that. But when you actually are running all of that, it's super fast. And so you have to almost like slow down time to show you like, this is all the things happening. Because it can be super powerful in terms of just really shortening the time that things are getting detected, triaged, resolved. It's funny. It's like it makes the worst demo when you actually run it in real time.
I think you run a big demo to only to signify how much time it's going to save you. So that's the ironical piece of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks again, Dormain. Thanks, Vinh. And yeah, I for all our viewers, please join us next time. We have another interesting partner, Tech. So I also pasted a link in the chat. So if you could please fill out the survey, we'd love to know how we're doing as well as how we can better improve the show. So thanks again, everyone, and hope you have a good rest of the week.
Thank you, Aniket, Rachel, for hosting us.
Absolutely.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.